Hey everybody, it's D from D&D Ditches, and today the D stands for Divide and Conquer. Welcome to part 4 of my 2E Planescape product showcase series. I've previously covered the box sets and the supplements, and today I'm tackling the published adventure modules. There were 12 Planescape branded adventure modules published, not counting Hellbound the Blood War, which was published as a deluxe box set. So I didn't want to cram all 12 books into the same video, that would be far too long. So I've divided them into 2 separate categories. The first category are the standalone adventure modules. These are modules which revolve around a single story event and are generally shorter. The second category is anthologies and adventure paths. These are books containing multiple adventures or campaign-length adventures which require more than 8 sessions to complete. This video will include all the standalone adventure modules, which consist of the Eternal Boundary, In the Abyss, the Deva Spark, Fires of Dis, Harbinger House, and Something Wild. I'm going to give a summary of the module, how it starts, and a small amount of spoiler about the themes of the adventure. I will mention which planes the adventure will visit in case you're looking for a module set on a particular plane. I will give you an estimated length of the module, how easy it is to convert to 5e, and whether the module is worth your time, and any other tips. So let's get started. So the Eternal Boundary was the first Planescape adventure released. It was released in May 1994, 1 month after the release of the original Planescape campaign setting box set. It was the second ever Planescape product released. The back cover blurb gives us an adventure summary. This adventure is designed for a party of 4 to 6 characters between 1st to 5th level. So let's open this up and see what else is inside. So the cover is detachable, as a lot of these adventures did back in the day. We have a 32-page booklet which outlines the adventure, and we also have a cardboard screen. This is made from a similar cardstock as the 2nd edition DM screens did. You can see the cardboard that they used was not very thick, but you can use this as a DM screen. If that's the case, the players will be able to see this side of the screen, which shows the cover artwork, as well as a map to the Hive Ward drawn in the abstract style, which shows several of the landmarks from the Hive Ward that the players will be able to explore. The Mortuary, which is the Dustman's headquarters, the Hive, which is the headquarters of the Chaos Techs, and the Gatehouse, which is the headquarters of the Bleak Cabal. We also have the Gatehouse Night Markets, the Blood Pit, which is a fighting arena, and also the Butcher's Block, which is an alehouse. On the other panel, we have the floor plan to the Black Sail Tavern. This is a tavern which the players may visit during the adventure. By using this as a DM screen, the players will have access to both the Black Sail Tavern as well as the Hive Ward map. However, those type of information, I'd say, should be available to the players anyway. On the inside of the screen, the first panel includes stat blocks for the enemies that you may face in this adventure. Remember, this was released before the Planescape Monsters Compendium, so a lot of these stats are actually from the base monster manual, and a lot of the encounters in this adventure are with human or humanoid NPCs. This makes the Eternal Boundary really easy to convert to 5e. You can use the humanoid NPC stat blocks in the 5e monster manual for a lot of these, and some of the base monsters from the monster manual. We also have the map for the Citadel of Fire, as well as the Mortuary. If you play the computer game Planescape Torment, you'll recognize that the Mortuary is very similar, because the game actually took the Mortuary map from this module. Going through the adventure booklet, we will see the very first discrepancy. Now remember, the back cover says that this adventure is suitable for 4 to 6 players between levels 1 to 5. The interior write-up actually confirms that this adventure is best suited for a party of 4 to 6 players between 1st and 3rd level. And I agree with the 1st to 3rd level recommendation, because going through this adventure with 5th level characters, they can just brute force everything. There are 2 pieces of full page artwork in this module, but they're quite generic. The premise of this adventure is that the players are contacted by somebody. This could be a faction contact if one of the players is a member of a faction. It could be a non-faction contact. They are tasked with seeking out an NPC by the name of Eliath. Eliath was last seen in the Hive Ward of Sigil. The way the adventure is written is heavy with Planescape, which is spoken in Sigil. This was a thing that they did for the setting back in 2nd editions. Planescape is quite contentious amongst players. Some people like it, some people hate it. But the reason why I bring it up is because this module introduces so much of it, you really need to be able to understand. So for example, early on in the adventure, players will get told that the Barmies and the Bubbers of the Hive have gone missing. Now, unless you know what Barmies and Bubbers refers to, that sentence would have made no sense to you. So in plain account, when somebody goes Barmy, it means that they've gone crazy. And Bub is an all-purpose term used to refer to alcohol. Hence, Bubbers refers to drunks. So what it translates to is that the crazies and the drunks of the Hive have gone missing. So there are 3 chapters in this adventure. For chapter 1, the players will spend most of their time in the Hive Ward of Sigil. Now, the Hive Ward is essentially the slum of the city. And they're going to interact mostly with factions who are active in the Hive Ward, such as the Bleak Cabal, the Chaositecs, and the Dustmen. The other thing to know about this adventure module, and it's also quite important, is that this adventure is a mystery. So I will communicate that to the players quite early on, as maybe not all of them will be into a mystery adventure, and misaligned expectations could lead to disappointment. So the adventure starts off as a sandbox, and chapter 1 sets up many scenarios and encounters in the Hive Ward. Each of these encounters is designed to give the players a hint to where to go next. I've also heard stories about people running this adventure where the players are not having a lot of fun because they were just not getting those hints. As a DM, you might have to be prepared to be a little bit more heavy-handed with some of these hints. After running some of these encounters and hopefully your player has figured out where to go next, chapters 2 and 3 are run as dungeon crawls. And because I've shown you what was inside the DM screen, it should come as no surprise that you will visit the mortuary at some point. And this adventure also visits the elemental plane of fire as per this piece of artwork. So that's as far as I will go in terms of spoilers, in case you're a player interested in playing through this module. So depending on how many encounters that you do during chapter 1, the sandbox section, and how quickly the players piece together the clues, it should take you between 2 to 4 sessions to complete this module. So the last thing that I'm going to leave you about this adventure is that I think that there's been a change with player expectation and the type of adventures run between 2nd edition and 5th edition. So you may have to take that into consideration a little bit if you're running for modern audiences. And what I mean is that back in the day, players didn't really need an incentive to go explore. For example, if you speak to multiple people in a town and they all say, hey, there's a haunted manor on the hilltop over there, players would take that as a hint and they'll be like, maybe I should go and explore that haunted manor. Players these days tend to have more of a what's in it for me type of mentality. They tend to need an incentive such as a reward being promised, especially if there's an element of risk at play. So as a DM, you may need to come up with some additional incentives or added pressure or stakes in order for the players to take action. Or as I mentioned earlier, you may have to be a little bit more heavy-handed with some of the hints. Maybe it'll come from an existing contact, a friend, a faction member, a family member, or something like that if the adventure is not progressing along. The worst thing that could happen with this adventure is if it never progresses out of the sandbox phase. I've heard stories about players who got stuck and they eventually got bored and the DM just moved on to a different adventure. If you are stuck at the sandbox portion, the adventure does actually give you a scenario where you can force the adventure to progress to the next chapter. However, it does come across as very railroady, and modern players may not appreciate that. I also recommend that you stick to the recommended level ranges between 1 to 3, not 1 to 5, as it encourages the players to engage more with the role-playing and be more cautious when it comes to exploring the dungeons. This could be a good first adventure to run for your level 1 players in Planescape, provided that your players are okay with the adventure being a mystery. So the next standalone adventure is called In the Abyss, which was released in October 1994, not to be confused with the 5th edition adventure Out of the Abyss, and unlike the 5e adventure, this module actually takes place in the outer plane of the Abyss. The blurb on the back states that this adventure is recommended for a party of 4 to 6 characters between levels 8 and 10, and unlike the Eternal Boundary, they didn't make a mistake this time. Once again, we have a slip-off cover, and on the inside we have a 32-page adventure booklet, as well as another DM screen. The side which faces the players show the cover artwork of the adventure, and we also have an artistic depiction of the Abyss. The artwork was done by Rob Lazzaretti. He does a lot of the cartography artwork for the Planescape settings, and his artwork is quite amazing. And then on the other side, we have the Trumpeter's Proclamation. This is a piece of visual prop. It depicts a Trumpeter's flag, and it's written to be a Rebus puzzle. If you know a little bit about the lore of the city of Sigil, you know that the city is run by the Darbus. These are the floating humanoid figures that serves the Lady of Pain, and their job is to maintain the city. They do not speak in the traditional sense, instead they project symbols that are similar to these rebus puzzles. So this piece of artwork can be considered a message written in the language of the Darbus. At the start of the adventure, the DM is encouraged to show this piece of artwork to the players. Even though I am familiar with the language of the Darbus, this is actually quite difficult. The translation of this message is provided in the book itself. So on the DM side of the screen, we have a map of the Ship of Chaos as well as some artwork, and then a hex scroll map for one of the layers of the Abyss. This is the area where the majority of the adventure takes place. Now, just like the previous adventure, In the Abyss is divided into 3 chapters. Although calling it 3 chapters is quite generous, because chapter 1 is pretty much just the introduction and the setup of the adventure. So the premise of this adventure is that the faction Doomguards went to the Abyss and built several ships of chaos for the Tenari demons towards their contribution to the Blood War. But it seems like one of these ships has gone missing. The adventure starts in Sigil. While the players are wandering the streets, they encounter an illusion of a trumpeter with this proclamation that we just looked at. So the sign points them to an NPC named Willem at the Grinning Imp. Willem effectively asks the players to track down this lost ship of chaos and offers a hefty amount of gold as well as magic items for the completion of this quest. During this phase, players will also have some additional roleplay opportunities to contact various factions to find out more information about the ships of chaos if they choose to, and also to inquire about the plane that they're going to set forth to, which is the Abyss. Chapter 2 is where majority of this adventure takes place, as the players arrive on the Abyss, and is presented as a sandbox hex scroll adventure. The players are able to explore the whole map and visit every single one of these locales if they choose to. So there's going to be a lot of encounters with the Tenari during this chapter, as the Abyss is the Tenari's home plane. We have a piece of artwork depicting the Tenari Molideus. The more locations the players go after, the more Tenari they're going to encounter, so there's going to be a lot of combat in this adventure. You see that the majority of the write-up consists of monster stat blocks. Although there are some unique locations with different types of encounters, but the goal is to locate the Ship of Chaos. And because I've already shown you the DM screen, we know that the Ship of Chaos will be visited at some point. So that's all I'm going to spoil about this adventure. Overall, this is quite a straightforward adventure compared to the Eternal Boundary, and depends on how long the players want to spend on the sandbox portion of this adventure. You're looking at between 2 to 4 sessions to complete this adventure. If you stick to the level recommendations of 8 to 10, the player characters are actually going to be quite formidable. Although one tip that I will give if you wish to run this adventure is that violence isn't the only option on the planes. The Tenari are intelligent creatures and they could be dealt with in other ways. So if the players come up with a clever or an interesting idea, particularly if it's non-violent, I will be interested in pursuing that option. Conversion to 5e is also pretty straightforward, as most of the demon stats are already in 5e. And the next adventure released is called the Deva Spark, and it was released just a month after In the Abyss in October 1994. So this adventure is recommended for 4 to 6 characters of 5th to 9th level. Now I will probably spoil this adventure a little bit more than the other ones, because what makes this adventure special compared to the others isn't apparent immediately and gets revealed a little bit into the adventure itself. I think by giving you a little bit more insight into what makes this adventure special will encourage more people to either want to play it or run this adventure. So once again, we have a slip-off cover and a 32-page booklet for the adventure, as well as another DM screen. The DM screen is designed a little bit differently to the other two that we looked at, as we have cover art to one side of the screen, and on the other side is the map to the realm of Principality located on Elysium. Although because you don't go there immediately from the start of the adventure, DMs might want to hold off before showing the players this map. And on the inside, we have monster and NPC stat blocks, as well as a version of the map of Principality for the DM containing more details about the locales. And then we have a map and illustration of the Abyssal Tavern, and a map of the Labyrinth. Once again, the adventure is divided into 3 chapters, so the backstory of this adventure is not revealed to the players at the start, but instead they will find out more and more about it as they go along with the adventure. So the adventure starts in Sigil, and the scene starts at a tavern called the Ubiquitous Wayfarer, and it involves the DM setting the scene to different types of interaction between different NPCs. Players are encouraged to engage with the activities and order drinks and food, and when the players leave, they're transported through a portal because they were given a portal key by mistake. And the portal happens to take them to a tavern in the abyss. So eventually a fight breaks out in this abyssal tavern as a Bebelith enters and starts a fight with a Deva. Now a Deva is a celestial, a being from the upper planes. You can think of them like an angel. And a Bebelith is a creature of the abyss that looks like a huge spider. It is not a Tanari, although it is considered a demon by later editions. So the Deva gets wounded during the fight with the Bebelith. The Bebelith leaves, and the wounded Deva is seeking help from the players. So this chapter is a little bit railroady. Instead of wasting time at the first tavern and then being transported and spending time at the second tavern, I will go straight to the Abyssal Tavern so we can get started with the story. Otherwise, players will eventually get bored during the first tavern scene and then finally moving forward just to find that they're in another tavern and having to go through another tavern scene will probably kill a lot of the player enthusiasm. The other thing about running this adventure is that you need to make sure that most of your player characters are going to be good aligned. If most of your characters are going to be in the "what's in it for me" crowd, then this adventure is not for them. The PCs would really need to be able to want to help the Deva with no immediate promised reward to really get this adventure going. While the book does give the Deva a way to coerce or convince the players to help them, unless most of them are good aligned or want to do things for selfless reasons, or they're willing to act in a heroic manner, the next part of the adventure is not going to work. So chapter 2 of the adventure takes you to Elysium, to the realm of principality, because the Deva, having been weakened, needs the players' help to be able to go back to its own plane. And it begins a little bit of a sandbox type of adventure as you explore Principality. And at this point, you are also being stalked by the Bebelith, who apparently has followed the party to Elysium. So now is when I'm going to give you a bit more spoiler so that you understand the context of what's actually happening. It is implied in this venture that Devas and Celestials have what they call a divine spark. It is a similar concept to their version of a soul. It is through this divine spark that they have this connection with the upper planes, which gives them certain supernatural abilities, such as functional immortality. They're immune to the effects of aging, and they're immune to some other debilitating effects that mortals tend to succumb to. So the Deva that you met prior to the start of this adventure lost his spark. I'm not going to say why. And the spark ended up being acquired by the Bebelith that the Deva fought against. So as the players travel through Elysium, they're going to find that the Deva gets weaker and weaker. And through the encounters of the Bebelith, the players will see that the Bebelith does not act in line with its chaotic evil nature, where it starts doing certain things that's more heroic. And that's the part that makes this adventure so great. So the core theme with this adventure revolves around the philosophy of whether the nature of a demon can be changed, and it tackles themes around morality. What is more important, the greater good or the lesser evil? That's as far as I'm going to spoil this adventure. This adventure is really fantastic because it really plays into the themes of philosophy that Planescape constantly flirts with. There are quite a few rough parts with this adventure as well, I won't lie about that. It's definitely a fixer-upper from what I already mentioned about chapter 1, but also the fact that if you're going to run the Elysium part, you can potentially get into a no-win situation. So I definitely think that this is an adventure where the narrative is more important than the mechanics, and this is why you really need to have good aligned player characters to really make this adventure sing, due to certain lore reasons when it comes to the plane of Elysium. If I was to run this adventure, I would definitely not be very strict when it comes to the time crunch, because you really want this adventure to pay off. And while this adventure is quite railroady at the start, it does actually open up a lot of choices, and players will have complete agency on how this adventure ends. And I believe the choices will open up a lot of philosophical debates amongst the players on how they want to end this adventure. This is a bit of a divisive adventure. It has a lot of potential because the ending and the payoff is absolutely amazing, but some people have certain issues about certain things breaking the lore and continuity of Planescape. But in my opinion, it can be worked around. The time limit can be worked around. It just takes a little bit of elbow grease from the DM, and for anybody who's willing to put a little bit of work in, this is definitely a great adventure. The next Planescape adventure release is called Fires of Dis, which was released in March 1995, almost a full year after the original Planescape box set. Dis is the name of the second layer of the 9 Hells of Beator. The cover artwork shows a Spinagon, which is one of the Beatazu, also known as devils. So it's not really going to be a surprise that this adventure takes place in the 9 Hells of Beator. On the back it states that this adventure is recommended for 4 to 6 characters between 5th to 9th level. In the Outer Planes, a Holy Sword can be a fiend's best friend, especially when the owner wants it back. We have a detachable cover, and the adventure booklet is 64 pages this time. And then for the DM screen we have the cover art on the side facing the players. And then we have a map of the gate town of Ribcage. And then on the other side, we have the map for the Gate Town Fortitude. Now I don't know how appropriate it is to reveal the maps to Fortitude and Ribcage, given Fortitude is not visited until right at the end of the adventure, and there's a chance that Ribcage could be skipped. And on the inside of the screen, we have a map for Avernus which details the River Styx, Darkspine, Tiamat's Lair, and a few other locations. We also have a map for the City of Dis. Given the name of the adventure is Fires of Dis, this is not really going to be much of a surprise. Now Dis is the name of both the layer as well as the city. And then we have the map of the Iron Tower, and then a map showing the Maggot's Pit and Tiamat's Lair. With the adventure being 64 pages, it is twice as long as the previous adventures that we looked at, and there are also 6 chapters in this adventure. This adventure starts off at the Great Bazaar of Sigil, and if you're running any shopping episodes in between adventures, that would be a great opportunity to start this module. So at the very start, the party witnesses a fight between a paladin and a Beatazu, also known as a devil. And at this point, the Beatazu runs away with the paladin's sword, a Holy Avenger. The party then encounters the faction Harmonium, also known as the Highheads, and they will hire the party to retrieve the Holy Avenger sword that was stolen. And thankfully, the Beatazu who stole the sword let it slip that the sword was to be delivered to Dis Beta, Lord of Dis, the second Hell of Beator. So you have your objective and your destination set very early on in the adventure. The Harmonia will offer the party a lot of gold and magical items as a reward to retrieving the sword, and told that the party is to deliver the sword to the Gate Town of Fortitude. Now we should discuss the ideal players. This adventure is fairly linear in design, so how it's meant to be played through its 6 chapters is that A leads to B, leads to C, leads to D, leads to E, and leads to F. However, as you're given the objective and the destination very early on, veterans of Planescape may try to go directly from Sigil to Dis. As Sigil is the City of Doors, it contains portals to every plane in the multiverse. So savvy planewalkers might think we can take a shortcut and start inquiring about a portal directly to Dis. As Planescape can be played as the ultimate sandbox, that is definitely a valid option. And that's going to cut out 60% of the adventure. And this adventure is pretty good, so it's going to be a shame if they cut out so much of it. Newcomers to Planescape might actually be more comfortable in following the lead of the DM, and I think that they're more likely to enjoy a linear adventure such as this. When I say linear, I don't mean railroad, because while there is a recommended path, each step provides you a lot of options and a lot of opportunities to roleplay or using different tactics to proceed. So it's likely that the player will still feel like they have agency. And if you're running this module as part of an existing campaign, you might want to plan out your adventures, because this adventure will definitely have more impact if the players have not visited Avernus or Dis prior to this. And because I've already shown you the different maps from the DM screen, you should already have some idea about the different destinations that this adventure will visit. So therefore, probably not going to be too much of a despoiler if I was to mention it. With the way the adventure is written, the path goes from Ribcage, Darkspine, Avernus, Tiamat's Lair, Dis. At each one of these locations is a mini sandbox. Players will have some clues on how to move forward, but there are also side objectives and other things that you can do, and it is through these other activities where the game really opens up. And there might be other shortcuts available, so therefore the length of this adventure really varies depending on how much or how little that the players do. If the players already have a shortcut to Dis, you may be able to finish up this adventure in 2 sessions. But if the players are really enjoying this module and wants to lap everything up, it can go up to 6, 7, or 8 sessions. This module is quite balanced when it comes to the different pillars of play, as it contains a good mix of social encounters, exploration, and combat. It's also designed well in that you have a very clear goal very early on, but still provides you enough options and choices on how to go about that. There are also a few surprises and plot twists in this adventure which I will not spoil, and it gives the players quite a few options on how to end the adventure as well. So overall, this is a very solid Planescape adventure. The ideal situation is for the party to follow the story beats, because each part's quite well designed. The only weakness that I can say about this adventure though, the 9 Hells of Beator is kind of boring. Anybody who's already played through Baldur's Gate 3 will think that they're an expert on Avernus already. Everybody thinks that they already know how devils work. And because it spends so much time on the Hells, this adventure is fairly easy to convert to 5e, given that most devil stat blocks are already in 5e, though you might want to run this adventure at the lower end of the character level recommendation, given 5e characters are quite resilient already. Now let's move on to the next Planescape adventure. It's called Harbinger House, and it was released in July 1995. This adventure is recommended for 4 to 6 characters between 4th and 7th level. A succubus with an unquenchable lust for power is turning the cage into a ripping madhouse, and the Lady of Pain ain't pleased. Once again, we have a detachable cover and a 64-page adventure booklet along with the DM screen. On the player side, we have the cover artwork depicting the succubus, and the additional artwork facing the players show neighborhoods within the various wards of Sigil. Maps showing the city of Sigil have been published previously, but they usually only show the key landmarks of the city, such as the faction headquarters. This is the first time where they've published a detailed street map. Although this is only for the vicinity of some key faction headquarters, we have the city barracks, the courts, the prison, and the armory, all of which are in the ladies' ward. Also quite interesting with the street names around the armory. As you may or may not know, the armory is the faction headquarters for the Doom Guards, and the Doom Guard have established a presence on the 4 negative quasi-elemental planes of vacuum, dust, salt, and ash, and they've named streets after these 4 planes. I've made a video explaining the inner planes, so if you're interested in finding out more about the negative quasi-elemental planes, I'll link a video up here for you. We also have the Shadow Temple area around the lower ward, and on the other end of this player facing screen, we have the Blood Gem Park vicinity. Blood Gem Park seems to be a new location created for this adventure because I've not heard of it before. It is right next door to the Temple of the Abyss, and I know that the Temple of Abyss is in the ladies' ward because we have the prison right here. And then the bottom panel is the Great Foundry neighborhood. The Great Foundry is the headquarters for the faction Believers of the Source. It is located in the lower ward of Sigil, but as you can see, we have the armory over here as well. This map shows the neighborhood between the ladies' ward and the lower ward, and the distance between the Great Foundry and the Shadow Temple, as they're both located on the lower ward, is, if this is where the Great Foundry is located, the Shadow Temple will be around about here. On the DM side of the screen, we have the same maps as the sides presented to the players, except certain locations are now numbered. We have a key of the Sigil streets, which provides the DM with more information about the additional locales that exist on these maps. We have maps of the Harbinger houses, which extends to the 3rd panel. We also have a map to the Gate Town of Ecstasy, and on the 4th panel, DM's version of this map which is presented to the players. So for the adventure itself, the 64 pages are divided into 3 chapters. So some background information about this adventure. This adventure revolves around the faction Believers of the Source. As we looked at the map previously, their headquarters located at the Great Foundry. Believers of the Source, their members are also known as Godsmen. They believe that every living being has the potential to become a god, and the members of the faction strives to climb the evolution ladder. They believe even if they do not achieve godhood within a single lifetime, they will be reincarnated into a new body. The idea would be each time that they're reborn that they're closer to godhood. So the Harbinger House is a facility that belongs to the Believers of the Source, and it's effectively a cross between an asylum and a safe house. There is a handful of faction members that the faction believes is very close to godhood already, but a lot of them have gone a little bit loopy in the head. So the factions decided that they will relocate these members to the Harbinger House for their own safety and also the safety of everybody else in Sigil. So the book gives you 3 suggestions on how to start the adventure, either when the party returns to Sigil from a previous mission, during downtime or during a shopping episode. It is at this point that the party witnesses a flock of Dabus, which mentioned previously are the civil servants of Sigil and servants to the Lady of Pain herself, and it seems like that they're acting strangely. And chapter 1 is presented as a sandbox around Sigil, particularly around the Ladies Ward and the Lower Ward, which relates to the pieces of map on the DM screen. This chapter also revolves around the murder mystery, as there is a serial killer on the loose and there has been numerous victims, various crime scenes and clues. And this is how it fits into the sandbox. Players are encouraged to visit different crime scenes, talk to witnesses, authorities, other factions, to try to catch the killer on the loose. So here comes the first recommendation for this module. Make sure that you communicate that this module deals with mystery and intrigue. If your players are not keen on the intrigue and they just want to smash monsters over the head, this is probably not the right module for them. The other thing is that this book recommends that you do not use it as the player's introduction to Planescape, given that it starts them off in the sandbox. They should already know about the city, the factions, and the major locations. With a little bit of modification, chapter 1 can also be run as its own adventure if you just want to run a short murder mystery. Provided that the party pieces together the clues, the party will eventually catch the killer. This module requires that the killer escape, like he's always got a trick up his sleeve type of situation. So while it could feel a little bit railroady, people who ran this adventure actually said that the players started developing a rivalry or hatred for the murderer, and every time that he escaped, it leaned more and more into that, and then at some point the players started getting personally invested in the story, trying to catch the killer. So it could be used as a tool to foster player engagement instead. As we move into chapter 2, Factile Amber of the Believers of the Source reaches out to the party to seek help, and the adventure moves to the Outlands, and we get to visit Ecstasy, the gate town to Elysium, as well as Cursed, the gate town to Kassiri. And then finally for chapter 3, the party gets to investigate the Harbinger House itself. I mean, that is the name of the module, plus we've seen maps for it, so I'm not going to pretend that you're not going to visit there. This is presented as a dungeon crawl. Throughout this adventure, the party will encounter multiple key NPCs, including the serial killer and a few other antagonists, and this all culminates in an epic finale scene where everybody gets involved. This adventure is heavy on the role-playing. We previously looked at the adventure Deva Spark, and the themes for that adventure revolved around the morals, as in the good versus evil alignment. This adventure explores the ethics, which is the lawful and chaos axis, as it deals with themes of authority and anarchy. So I will also mention that both adventures were written by Bill Slavicsek, a senior designer from TSR. He did a lot of work for some of the other settings, but he's written I think 3 or 4 adventures for Planescape. He then went on to overseeing a lot of the 3rd and 4th edition Dungeons & Dragons products. There have been criticism about Bill's work on Planescape, and it's a consistent theme across the different products that he contributed towards Planescape, so let's talk about it. So one complaint is that a lot of his work breaks the lore and continuity of Planescape. For example, one of the key NPCs in this adventure has a stalkerish obsession with the Lady of Pain, which is a big no-no, as the Planescape fans will tell you worshipping the Lady of Pain in Sigil is one of the most dangerous things that you could do. But in saying that, it could be worked around. I would just make him obsessed with another faction's Factile instead. For example, Erin Montgomery of the Sensates. She's a popular figure in Sigil and has enough stalkers of her own to worry about one more. And there are certain things in relation to the Harbinger House itself, but again, I don't think it's a big deal, since it fits in with the philosophy of the Godsman, but it's mostly used as a MacGuffin anyway, so you could change it without really changing the storyline. And the Lady of Pain don't concern herself with the squabbling of mortals anyway. So once again, I think all of the cons can be worked around, but on the other hand, the pros on this adventure are plenty. You have a great murder mystery adventure, you have several NPCs with big personalities, you have heavy role-playing, you have philosophical discussions, you have a dungeon crawl in there, and you have an epic finale scene. So I really think that this adventure is a must-run, provided that your players enjoys intrigue. As for converting to 5th edition, this adventure is quite roleplay heavy, but a lot of the antagonists tend to be humanoids, so you might have to source your own stat blocks, or there is a Harbinger House 5e conversion on DM's Guild that you can use. And the last Planescape adventure that we're going to feature in this video is the one called Something Wild. It was released in February 1996. Notably, it was released 3 months after the Planes of Conflict box set. What TSR did a lot back in the day was to release supplements or accessories, followed by an adventure which would take advantage of the new materials from the supplements. This was a strategy for them to provide an incentive for the consumer to pick up the related product. In addition, TSR was also trying to cross-promote products from different campaign settings, so they also recommend it in using the Ravenloft to supplement the Nightmare Lands as additional resources. Now, the Nightmare Lands is a domain of dread in Ravenloft, however, one can easily visit that domain by just having a bad dream, which is a consistent theme in this adventure. So this adventure is recommended for 4 to 6 characters of 4th to 7th level. Every Burke and Sigil struggles to keep his savage side at bay, but now the bars to the cage are breaking down. Open it up and what do we find? This looks quite different to the previous products. We still have a 64-page adventure booklet. We have an A4 piece of paper with some artwork provided on it. On one side it depicts a parchment with what looks like a message and a map. And on the other side we have a map for the Land of the Hunt, and we have the map for Krigala, which is the first layer of the Beastlands. The slip-out cover is made of slightly thicker material. It contains a map to the Stalking Grounds, and on the opposite panel we have the Garolith lair, a map to the town of Signpost, and the map to the interior of the Dreamhearth. This adventure is quite different as it features 2 outer planes that don't normally get a lot of love. We have the upper plane of the Beastlands, where the plane is represented by wild untamed wilderness filled with animals, and this adventure also features the lower plane of Kassiri, also known as Tartarus, so therefore a prison plane. And Garolith is the fiend that has its origins in Kassiri. It is also known as Demodans in both 1st edition and 5th edition. So every single one of these standalone adventures that we covered so far also revolves around one of the factions of Sigil. The Eternal Boundary explores the Dustmen, In the Abyss involves the Doomguard, the Deva Spark features the Transcendent Order, Fires of Dis revolves around the Harmonium, Believers of the Source features prominently in Harbinger House, and the faction involved in Something Wild is the Sign of One. You notice that this adventure did not come with a DM screen like the previous ones. TSR was experiencing a lot of financial troubles, so I will not be surprised if that was done for cost-cutting reasons. One thing that Something Wild differs from the previous adventures was that they commissioned brand new art from Tony DiTerlizzi, the setting artist. There are a few pieces of art in the previous modules. Most of them were full-page spreads like these, but this is the first time where it features unique art from Tony DiTerlizzi. Anytime they used Tony's art in the previous modules, they were recycled from a previous product. The adventure starts in Sigil, where the residents of the city starts having recurring nightmares, and the player characters are also not immune. In their dreams, they're being hunted by large cat-like shadows, and some people are more sensitive to these nightmares than others. In particular, druids and rangers who have a closer connection to nature, hybrid animal races such as centaurs and barrios, and also faction members belonging to the Sign of One. The nightmares cause these individuals to momentarily lose control during moments of high tension, as if their body was taken over by bestial rage. But this feeling quickly subsides. Something Wild gives you 2 different ways to start this adventure. Most of the other adventures gives you alternate starting scenarios, but they all kind of seem a bit like the Quantum Ogre. They could take place at different locations or under different conditions, but Something Wild gives you 2 completely different starts. The party could meet Sarshal from the Verdant Guild, hailing from Beastlands, who recently came to Sigil to seek help to assist with the troubles on Beastlands, or the party could meet a Mercy Killer Paladin named Mole. Now, the Mercy Killers run the prison in Sigil, but due to overcrowding, they've transferred some inmates to a super high security prison located on Kassiri. Planar conditions on Kassiri being a prison plane naturally makes it almost impossible for prisoners to escape, except that several of the prisoners disappeared without a trace, and he's trying to find out why. Chapter 1 is a bit of a sandbox. Players are given an opportunity to scout around Sigil, find more information by speaking to some of the other factions. So I think both of the intros are really interesting, and I would actually run both of these. This is a great sandbox part of the adventure, as there are many roleplay opportunities and many interesting pieces of information. At this point, the players can decide in what order to do the rest of the adventure in. Chapter 2 takes place in Kassiri, and Chapter 3 in the Beastlands. There are some additional quirks with the different planes, as introduced in the Planes of Conflict box set, which make these outer planes feel really different. As the players journey deeper, they will find the answers to how these events are all related, and what happens on one plane affects the other. On the Beastlands, the players will eventually turn into an animal, which is part of the planar conditions of Beastlands. Well, normally the DM gets to pick what animal represents each of the player characters. I personally will work with each and every one of them and agree upon an animal that best suits their character, as I believe that will get them more invested into the story. Overall, this is one of the best standalone adventures adventures of Planescape. Both Kasiri and the Beastlands are so seldomly used in adventures, it's going to feel extremely fresh even for veteran players. The adventure is a lot more original than Fires of Dis, and no part of this adventure breaks the lore unlike Harbinger House, so you can run it exactly as it's written. Furthermore, if you want to expand the adventure, you can also use the Nightmare Lands box set, which has additional rules when it comes to playing in Dreamscape. So you can flesh out the Nightmare sections of this adventure, and bring in another world which also feels different to the Beastlands and Kasiri. In terms of length, I'd say between 5 to 8 sessions. As for playing this adventure in 5e, the Demo Dance stats have been added to the Planescape 5e release, so you can use it from there. Although there might still be creatures that's not currently in 5e, it is likely that DM's Guild will have a 5e conversion of this adventure at some point. Hey, thanks for coming to hang out with me in this remote and secluded corner of YouTube. If you want to support the channel, leave a like and comment, and subscribe for more Planescape content. Until next time, hope we get to hang out again in my next video.